Hello, and welcome back to the Rekindling the Legacy podcast. I am Professor Andrew Davies.
And I'm Dr. Juhi Gupta, and together we are here to retell the stories of some of the heroic women who fought for their freedom against all the odds and made India the nation it is today.
A fearless leader, a symbol of resistance, and a name etched forever into India's fight for freedom. Even now, centuries later, the name Jhansi Ki Rani stirs something in the soul of anyone who hears it. In today's episode, let's meet Rani Lakshmibai, the legendary Queen of Jhansi. Juhi, who was Lakshmibai?
So today we are going back to the 1800s, into a time of colonial conquest, personal tragedy, rebellion, and resilience. Lakshmibai was Rani or Queen of Jhansi, a city in the southwestern Uttar Pradesh, up in the north of India. She confronted the colonial powers to fight for her city against all the odds in the face of immense military power of the British, who grew to fear her. To Indians over time, she became more than a queen. She is recognized as the face of resistance, as a symbol of courage. Statues of her with sword in hand and child on back stand tall across India.
Her story begins in Varanasi, or Banaras as it was known then, in 1828. A girl named Manikarnika Tambe was born into a Marathi Brahmin family. Her nickname was Manu. Her father, Morapant Tambe, was an advisor in the court of the Peshwa in Bitur, and so Manu was raised in the shadow of aristocracy, but raised unlike most girls of her time. She lost her mother when she was just 4 years old, and growing up, her hobbies were not quite the traditional activities of most young girls of the time. She was trained in sword fighting, horse riding, and shooting. She practiced Malakamba, a traditional Indian sport that's a bit like aerial yoga meets gymnastics. In short, she grew up like a warrior.
She made some key friendships during this time. She seems to have been quite close to Peshwa, who used to be the head of government at that time. The Peshwa affectionately called her Chabili, meaning playful. She was close friends with two boys who would one day be major figures in the freedom movement, Nana Sahib and Tatya Tope. But her life changed dramatically at the age of just 14 when Manu was married to the Maharaja of Jhansi, Gangadhar Rao Nevalkar. Just like that, she became Rani Lakshmibai, the young queen of a small but significant princely state in northern India.
In 1851, Lakshmibai gave birth to a son, Damodar Rao, but tragedy struck. The baby died within just 4 months. Heartbroken, the royal couple adopted a child from a distant relative and named him Damodar as well. They made the adoption official in the presence of a British political officer just before the Maharaja's death in 1853. In the Maharaja's will, he made his wishes very clear indeed. His adopted son would inherit the throne, but Lakshmibai would govern Jhansi.
But the British had other plans.
Yes, indeed. The Governor-General of India at the time was Lord Dalhousie, and he'd introduced a policy in the late 1840s called the Doctrine of Lapse. The Doctrine of Lapse was one of many tactics the East India Company used to try and remove the power base of the Indian aristocracy and to replace them with British officials. This doctrine involved the British prohibiting a Hindu ruler without a natural heir from adopting a successor. So after the ruler died or abdicated, they were able to annex his land.
So the East India Company declared the annexation of Jhansi. Lakshmibai was offered a pension of 60,000 Indian rupees and required to vacate the city fort and the throne. Her recorded response has become one of the most famous lines in Indian history. "Main apni Jhansi nahi dungi," which means I'll never give up my Jhansi. Indeed, she spent the next 3 years fighting the annexation through diplomatic and legal means, whilst building up and training her own group of women bodyguards.
Fast forward to 1857 and the start of the Sepoy Mutiny. At least that's what the British called it. In India, it was known as the First War of Independence. At this time, anger against colonial rule had been simmering, and now it finally boiled over. Initially, Lakshmibai stayed out of this rebellion, but the British didn't trust her, and the people, especially after hearing of the massacre of British families in Jhansi by rebelling soldiers, blamed her for the situation, whether that was fair or not. Lakshmibai tried to clear her name, even sent reports to British officials about the affair, but there was silence from them and a lack of support. Instead, Lakshmibai's enemies surrounded her, neighbouring rulers attacked Jhansi, and the British withheld their support.
So what did she do? She took command. She fortified her city. She trained her troops. She repelled invaders, both from outside and within. From August 1857 to March 1858, Jhansi stood strong under her leadership. But in March 1858, British forces under Sir Hugh Ross arrived. He demanded surrender. She refused. He began the siege.
And the bombardment of Jhansi was brutal. For over a week, the British shelled the fort, trying to break the spirit of the defenders. But Lakshmibai held firm. Until finally, on April the 2nd, the walls were breached and the British stormed in. Her troops were overwhelmed, and yet even then, Lakshmibai did not give up.
In one of the most cinematic movements in Indian history, Rani Lakshmibai, with her adopted son Damodar tied to her back, leapt from the fort on horseback, on her beloved horse Badal, and escaped. She joined forces with Tatya Tope and regrouped in Kalpi. Together, they fought the British again and lost again. But they did not quit. They moved to Gwalior, and this time they took the fort. Nana Sahib was declared the Peshwa. For a moment, it seemed like victory was possible.
But Lakshmibai knew better. She sensed another British assault coming and urged the leaders to prepare for this. Tragically, they didn't listen.
On June 17, 1858, British forces attacked at Kota Ki Sarai. In a fierce fighting that followed, Rani Lakshmibai was killed in battle. She was just 29 years old.
There are many stories about her death. Some say she died in uniform, fighting like a soldier. Others say that she asked for her body to be cremated after death so the British wouldn't defile it. Either way, she certainly died on her own terms as a warrior to the very end.
Sir Hugh Ross, the British commander who defeated her, called her the most dangerous of all Indian leaders. And perhaps that's her highest praise because she terrified the empire.
But at the same time, she inspired the nation of India. Schools, universities, military regiments, to this day all bear her name. She inspired paintings, sculptures, films, books, and one of Subrata Kumari Chauhan's most famous and beloved poems, Jhansi Ki Rani, which is still taught in schools up and down India today, and is arguably one of the most famous poems in the entire corpus of Hindi literature. Each stanza of this epic poem ends with the couplet, Bundele Habalon ke moon hamne suni kahani thi, kubladi madani wota Jhansi wali Rani thi. This story we heard from the mouths of the Bundel bards. Like a man she fought. She was the queen of Jhansi.
Bundele har bolon ke muh humne suni kahani thi. Khoob ladi mardani wo to Jhansi wali Rani thi. As we always conclude our biographies by asking and answering the question that what was her legacy? How has she contributed? So Andrew, what would you say about Rani Lakshmibai?
You know, Juhi, the one thing that strikes me about Rani Lakshmibai more than anything else is the human story at the back of the politics here. She wasn't originally born to political power. She wasn't born into the Maharaja's family. She married in. Yes, she had the political connections and the political background through her father, but she wasn't born into revolution. She wasn't born to high status. She faced loss, betrayal, impossible odds on her journey, and yet those experiences shaped and inspired her leadership. So her story isn't just about history. It's not just about events. It's about her commitment and her resilience to working for change and for the good of her people despite those events. Her story is about standing your ground when everything around you tells you to give in.
That's why Rani Lakshmibai's legacy lives on, not just in textbooks, but in the hearts of people. As a woman who broke every expectation and carved her name into the stones of history. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. What a remarkable woman Manikarnika Tambe, Rani Lakshmibai was, and how impactful her life has been. We hope her story inspires and uplifts you today.
Yes, thanks indeed, dear listeners, so much for joining us. We very much hope to have you join us again for our next episode when we'll tell the story of another remarkable Indian woman freedom fighter.
And if you enjoyed this episode, do share it with someone who needs a little inspiration today. And don't forget to follow the Rekindling the Legacy podcast for more stories of the underestimated women who shaped our world. Thank you.